Mangroves are quite unique. Their carbon storage, coastline protection, water filtration, nurseries for fish, and habitat for birds and countless other species. They're often described as blue carbon systems. The basic idea is that coastal ecosystems like mangroves can pull carbon out of the atmosphere and store it not only in their trunks and leaves, but in the sediment and soils beneath them. When mangrove material, like leaves, branches and roots, ends up in that coastal environment, it can be buried. Mangroves can store more carbon per hectare than other ecosystems, and they can keep that carbon stored for centuries or longer when left intact. So mangroves are not just green, they're a carbon vault. Mangroves filter and purify water as it moves through coastal zones. Their root system slows water down. When water slows down, sediment settles. You don't just get nutrient-rich mud, you also reduce the amount of pollutants that go straight out to sea, helping trap things like nitrates and phosphates and even pollutants like heavy metals. And that matters because excess nutrients can fuel some of the worst coastal problems: algal blooms, red tides, and those big mats of seaweed you sometimes see washing up. It's the difference between a coastal system that buffers shocks and a coastal system that becomes a conveyor belt for everything we dump upstream. Mangroves don't solve pollution, but they can reduce the load, buy time, and protect nearby systems. And in a world where a huge amount of sewage globally still reaches the ocean without treatment, and where plastic leakage remains an ongoing crisis, a living filtration zone like this can make a difference. Shoreline stabilisation is where mangroves start to sound like infrastructure. Water is a brilliant eroder. Over time, it can shape continents. And at the human scale, it can carve away shorelines, destroy property, and turn storms into disasters. Mangroves help prevent erosion. They stabilise soil, build soil, slow the movement of water, break up wave energy, and reduce storm surge. And the more intact the mangrove belt is, the more protection it can offer. No ecosystem is a magic shield. Storms can overwhelm anything, but the principle is simple. When you remove a natural shock absorber, you increase the force that reaches people and buildings behind it. Mangroves sit at the boundary between land and sea, and boundaries are often where ecosystems do the most work. Mangrove buffers can help protect inland systems from saltwater intrusion. They can protect terrestrial plants that can't tolerate salt. They can reduce toxic runoff, reaching sensitive habitats. And they also support the health of other coastal ecosystems: marsh, meadows, seagrass, coral reefs. This is one of the reasons mangroves are described as keystone systems in many regions. Take them away and a lot of other things start to wobble. When people think of mangroves, they often picture fish, crabs and birds. And yes, mangroves are nurseries. They provide shelter for juvenile fish and shellfish. They support oysters on the roots in slow flow areas. They support shrimp and crabs and countless species that form the base of local food webs. But mangroves are home to a huge number of non-aquatic animals too: insects, amphibians, birds and land animals. And as mangrove acreage shrinks, the extinction risk rises, not only for mangrove ecosystems, but for hundreds of animal species that depend on them. So environmentally, the case is already strong. Carbon storage, water filtration, storm protection, ecosystem balance, and biodiversity. But let's go to the part that often changes people's minds: the economics. Globally, mangroves prevent massive amounts of damage each year and reduce flood risk for millions of people. Mangroves reduce the size of disasters, and when you reduce the size of disasters, you save money on repairs, emergency response, rebuilding, and on the slow hidden costs of disruptions. And then there's the comparison that matters for policy. Restoring or protecting mangroves is often less expensive and more effective than building hard defences like walls. Because seawalls are expensive to build and maintain, they can worsen erosion in adjacent areas, and they don't give you side benefits like carbon storage, habitat, water filtration, and fisheries. Whereas a healthy mangrove system is alive, it can grow, adapt, maintain itself if it's protected and managed properly. So the question isn't, do we choose nature or infrastructure? The better question is, why would we ignore infrastructure that comes with multiple co-benefits? Mangroves support livelihoods for huge numbers of coastal people. They support fisheries directly and indirectly. They support forestry and manage timber in some contexts. They support recreation for tourism. They support food security. Mangroves generate tens of billions of dollars worth of value globally from fisheries, forestry, and recreation. A large share of commercially caught fish species spend part of their life cycle in mangroves or nearby coastal forests. Mangroves are nurseries and feeding grounds. They're the places where small things can grow large enough to become the bigger things that we actually catch. So when mangroves disappear, fisheries can decline, income declines, and food security declines. If you live in a coastal region, property protection isn't abstract. Manufacturing protection, engineering your way out of storms, is usually more expensive and often less effective than keeping natural protection in place. And on top of that, when you remove mangroves and replace them with hard infrastructure, you lose the carbon benefits and the habitat benefits at the same time. So you pay more to get less. Mangroves are one of the clearest examples of how environmental protection and economic protection are often the same project. Mangroves protect biodiversity. They protect coastlines, people, food systems, and they reduce costs that would otherwise land on governments, communities, and households. Even if the primary motivation should be saving habitats and lives, the economic case is not a side note. It's part of the reason mangroves should be treated as serious climate adaptation infrastructure. So if you're in a place that has mangroves, or used to, the question is not, are they nice to have? The question is, what does it cost to lose them? And what do we gain by restoring them? A lot of climate conversation becomes abstract. Targets, percentages, net zero slogans. Mangroves are refreshingly tangible. They are one of the rare things that can reduce emissions, store carbon, protect coastlines, and support livelihoods all at once.